Hey everybody, welcome out to the show Board Game Reviews, and welcome to the monthly vlog where I talk about some games I've been playing, some kickstarters I've been interested in, and at the end of the video you get a chance to be part of a poll. Polls are going to help you influence future content for this channel. Generally speaking, I'll put up a couple board games, and by voting process you get to decide which game will be reviewed on the channel next. Now, I'm turning this video series into a monthly video series. I was trying to do this as a bi-weekly, but it just is not happening lately. For the simple fact that I'm just not getting as many games played as I want because of basically what's going on in the world right now. We're doing a lot of social distancing, so I'm not getting quite as many games to the table, and I always want this to be a video series when I talk about, games I've been enjoying, get some really good feedback, but of course the idea here is not to have the long-winded things where I'm talking about games for about 20 minutes, giving my very long opinionated review of the game. Basically, it's a chance for me to talk about some games, give you a rough overview of what I'm enjoying about the game, talk about it a little bit enough just to give you an indication of how the game plays a little bit, then talk about some kickstarters that really have some really good interest for me, or occasionally I may talk about a couple of kickstarters just have me completely baffled and puzzled why they even exist. And of course, at the end of this, we're generally going to have a nice poll at the end, but not in this video, and I'll explain at the end of the video why we're not having a poll this time. But that's enough of the just ranting and rambling on here. Let's go ahead and talk about some games I've been enjoying lately, starting with Dawn of the Zeds. Dawn of the Zeds is a tower defense style game for 1 to 5 players. Now, the basic game is a cooperative style game, and if you're playing as a cooperative game, you can only play as a 1 to 4 player game. But if you really want, you can actually play this game all the way up to 5 players by the 5th player taking control of the Zeds or the zombies. But the basic idea is you're going to play the game by you're trying to protect the town city center here. And as the game goes on, zombies are going to be marching along this track. Now, this is a double-sided board. This is the easy, wimpier side of the board, which only has 4 tracks to worry about. But the back side of the board actually has 5 different tracks you have to worry about, and including these 4 that you see right here, there's also an underground path that the zombies are using to slowly work their way towards the center of town. And the trick and the difficulty of this game is you just need to survive this event deck here. If you get all the way down to the event deck, you're going to get to an end card. If you survive the end card, congratulations, you managed to win the game. And you're going to add up your score based on just how well you managed to survive, based on how many survivors you have managed to keep alive, how many of these defiant villagers you managed to convince that, hey, being out here in the zombie apocalypse is a terrible idea. Maybe you should come back to town where we can keep you safe. Maybe a better idea? I think so. Also, keeping the general villagers alive, keeping these town people alive, and convincing them that being out in the wilds is just a terrible idea. This is basically The Walking Dead as the best version of a board game I have ever seen. And the game does play pretty darn great all the way from 1 to 4 players. Notice I said from 1 to 4 players. The game does have a way to play this game as a competitive game where 1 player controls the Zeds. And I don't think it's the best way to play the game. I think this game is doable as a 5-player game, and it's definitely playable with somebody controlling the Zeds, but your amount of actions are a little bit more restricted, and I've always had the most fun playing this game as a purely cooperative game. And the basic idea of the game is you have to control your resources, such as how much food you have in the game, how many bullets you have, and you also have to control this track of just how dangerous the Zeds are getting. Because as the zombies get more dangerous, this track is going to slowly go up, and you may start revealing some of the super Zeds that are going to come out on the board. And they are much tougher, much more damage, and much more challenging to defeat. And the basic way this game is going to be played is you're going to use a dice mechanic when you're going out there and attacking the different Zeds, and when they're coming out there and attacking you, and you're going to use this as a cross-reference on the chart. Basically speaking, you always want to roll higher than the bad guys, and you want to outnumber the bad guys. If you roll low or the bad guys happen to outnumber you, there's a pretty darn good chance that our heroes are going to start taking damage. If they take enough damage, they're going to go to the infirmary, or they're going to be defeated and end up over in the cemetery and the graveyard. So the game is extremely challenging, and the really cool thing is how you're going to see this event deck every time you play the game. Because at the start of the game, before you play the game, you're going to see the event deck based on just how difficult of the game you want to be, how long of a game you want to play, and just how many of the different mods you want to have in the game. I have it set up here for one of the very early different difficulties of the game. But if you want, you can start throwing in their secret research, secret tactics, different things that you need to work on. You can start having this jail where you start throwing in the very terrible bad guys who think that maybe a zombie apocalypse is a great thing because there's a horrible scientist who, yep, you got it, he thinks that's a great thing. But the cool thing about this is you're going to see this deck at the beginning of the game. You're going to start with event cards that only have 1 star on them. They're not that tough, not that difficult, but as you start working through it, you're going to get the 2-star cards, the 3-star cards, and the 4-star cards, and every one of these cards is going to tell you exactly what's going to happen. You're basically going to solve these cards from left to right, and then once you've done that, you've solved this event card, and you go on to the next event card, and again, you just need to get to the bottom survive that end card, and you manage to win and survive the day. But the cool thing about this is going to tell you exactly some of the things that you don't have any control, what's going to happen with them. For example, how some of these survivors may realize that's a good idea to start fleeing towards the town. That would be controlled by that, but again, when they come to town, they're going to start eating your food resources, so you have to watch that carefully. You're going to also decide how much is going to be modified on the board. You're going to start seeing how the different Zeds are going to start advancing down the tracks, because this card is going to tell you which tracks are actually going to advance, and these Zeds are going to move down. These Zeds happen to encounter villagers, they're going to attack them. They happen to encounter our heroes, they're also going to attack our heroes. And our heroes don't have a lot of hit points, and as they start taking damage, they will be defeated and sent to the infirmary. But it's the same thing for the Zeds. If they manage to take 6 points of damage, they're also going to be defeated and returned to the bag. So the game does have a very good, solid challenge rating. But like I said, these event cards can be very, very challenging, because I showed you the basic event cards, but then you're going to shuffle in the very, very damaging ones. And again, these are going to come out in a more difficult level. The 1-star ones you don't have to worry about, but you're going to get the 2 stars, the 3-star cards, and the 4-star cards, and these are going to start adding a lot of variety and a lot of challenges to the game. So this is a really greatly designed game. It plays phenomenally as a solo game. This is one of the games that you can pull out, put on the table, and play for about 2 hours as a really great solo game. It also plays really, really well as a cooperative game. Now, the game is not as its best as a cooperative. While it's enjoyable as a cooperative, I think it's best as a 2-player cooperative game, because as a group you need to share your actions, and also as a group you're also going to share control of all of the different NPCs and the heroes and everything going on. So you have a very limited action pool that you're trying to control while you're trying to decide how to make all these decisions and try to save these heroes, and again, just survive until that last event and save the day before the Zeds destroy our planet. Next up is A Touch of Evil. Now, A Touch of Evil is a game for 1 to 8 players. It can be played as a cooperative game, or as a competitive game, or as a Scooby-Doo style game. But if you've ever played any Flying Frog production games, you're pretty much familiar with the style of game that this is. This is a game that is all about the theme. The theme actually trumps the mechanics, and you know, that can be good or that can be bad, and that's up to your opinion. But this is a game that truly, truly is a game that's married to its theme. The basic idea of the game is that our heroes are trying to defeat an ancient evil, which has brought ruin and destruction. Well, maybe not destruction, I'm being a little overly dramatic here, but they're basically secretly trying to bring ruin to this little town of Shadowbrook. Now, the game I'm showing you right here is from the 10-year anniversary edition. There are a couple different expansions which add more maps and make the game board bigger. But the basic idea is our heroes are working together to try to defeat this villain. Now, this villain is going to be hidden inside of a lair, and this will be, as the players play, they're going to try to figure out which lair the villain is hidden in. The game is played as a very thematic game, though, because the idea of the game is the players will be moving around the board, having interactions at these different locations. Every one of these locations is attached to a specific deck of cards. Now, some of these cards in these decks, if you go to the more northern locations, not quite as dangerous, but as you start going to the more southern locations, they become much more dangerous, but the rewards are greater. And again, like I said, this is a game that's all about its theme and its story. So as the players play the game, they'll be walking around, going to these different locations and encountering events. They're going to be encountering mysteries, and they're also going to be rolling dice on the table that's going to decide what exactly special encounters they're going to have at the end of every single round. Because the idea of the game is every player is going to take their actions by moving around the board. They're going to interact with the space where they end up. They're going to do some special different actions, and turn is going to be over. It's going to go around the table like that for all the players to take their action, and then the bad guy gets to go on their activation phase. Now, if you're playing as a cooperative game, the bad guy is going to get an extra roll of the dice, get some extra actions. If you're playing the competitive Scooby-Doo style game, you're just going to worry about the mystery cards, which are going to say some very bad things, which is going to happen for our heroes. Now, the basic idea of the game is if you're playing competitive, you want to be the first person to defeat the grand villain by getting rid of all his hit points. If you're playing the cooperative game, again, as a group, you're trying to defeat the villain by getting rid of all his hit points. The difference is, and when you're playing the cooperative game, his hit points can be multiplied by the amount of players in the game, making it a little more difficult. So our heroes are working around the town, trying to find investigation, which is a currency for the game, but they're going to get that from interacting with different spaces, interacting with these cards, and they use these different amounts of investigation to purchase items, which will make our heroes much more stronger. But the extra layer that adds a nice little bit of intrigue to the game is that the town has its town elders. Now, the game comes with 6 of these town elders, and there's also some secret cards. Now, the thing is, there are more secret cards in the game than there are elders, and these secrets are slowly going to be revealed throughout the game. Some of these secrets are very benign, such as somebody may have done something in the past that they don't want anybody to know about. Some of these secrets can be very good, such as they're actually secretly a hero. Well, I'm paraphrasing here, but they're trying to help our heroes defeat this grand villain. But sometimes, some of these secrets are going to reveal that some of these town elders are actually villains and they are in a league with the bad guy. And our heroes are not going to know this until they try to recruit these town elders to help them take out these bad guys. Because trust me, these bad guys are very powerful, very tough, and taking them out alone is something you're not going to be able to do too easily unless you power up our heroes. Now the game does come with a lot of different villains that are going to add a lot of replay value to the game. As a matter of fact, if you buy the 10-year anniversary edition, which is kind of funny because it came out 12 years after the original game, so it's technically a 12-year anniversary, but you know, it's a little side joke. At least I find it funny. But the game does come up with all these different villains, and the nice thing about this edition is it also has all the villains from the web that you were supposed to download from Flying Frog Productions, but they're actually all included with the game now, and they also have their own little nice little cards with their own little story, their own abilities, and the special things that happen. Now this game is really, really entertaining for what it is. This is truly a thematic game, and it brings in the theme of the game very, very well. Whether our heroes are going around to different locations, encountering bad guys on the board, whether our heroes are trying to avoid the secrets of the elders and making sure the elders are on their side, and hoping these secrets don't get revealed and end up with these elders becoming traitors to the cause, because if they do, they're going to make the bad guy more powerful. So where our heroes are going to move around, leave tracks. Also, we need to be fighting this track that's slowly going around because it's a timed game. Now, there is no round timer in the game, but as events happen, such as mysteries happen, such as events happen, this track is going to continue dwindling. If this track ever reaches 0, it doesn't matter the status of our heroes, whether we're playing a competitive or a cooperative game, all our heroes are lost. So we have a little bit of a time pressure. We have a kind of a story-rich game where our players are trying to level up to become powerful enough to take out this grand villain and win the game. Now, one final thing that's really cool about the 10th anniversary edition, besides these miniatures, which I cannot wait till I get a chance to paint these miniatures because they're going to look really awesome on the board. But the cool thing about the 10-year anniversary is it comes with a final super powerful baddie called the Epic Horseman. And what this has done is you have the standard spectral horseman right here, but now we have a villain called the Epic Horseman, and he is much, much, much more powerful than the standard horseman. You see he's got more powerful abilities, he brings more to the table and adds some additional challenges. So if you felt like A Touch of Evil was getting a little bit too easy for you, well, I doubt it, especially if you start getting all the expansions, adding in the extra boards and everything like here. But if you ever want to get some extra challenge, I can tell you the Spectral Horseman does add a lot of extra challenge to the game of A Touch of Evil. Next up we have is Disney Villainous. Now Disney Villainous is a game for 2 to 6 players, and it's basically what I like to describe as almost a multiplayer solitaire style game, but there is a little bit of player interaction. But the basic idea of the game is every single player takes control of a basic classic Disney villain. You have Captain Hook, you have Ursula, you have Maleficent, all these different classic Disney villains, and every single player is going to take control of one of these classic Disney villains. And your basic objective as one of these Disney villains is you are trying to play through your deck of cards. You're trying to play through your deck of cards to complete your specific mission objective. The first person to complete their very specific mission objective is going to be the grand winner of the game. And when you buy the game, it does come with a little strategy guide. It tells you exactly how you're supposed to be playing your specific villain. So it's basically a race to be the first person to complete your objective, whatever that happens to be. Captain Hook is trying to get Peter Pan out to the tree to go ahead and defeat him there. Ursula is trying to do her special thing. You have Jafar, who's trying to do a special thing. Every one of these villains is trying to do their own special thing to win the game. Now, the only way players have any player agency over any other player at the table is by playing these negative cards on every single one of our heroes. But I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here. What you need to do on your turn is, on your turn, you're going to move your little player piece to one of these different locations, as long as it's not a locked location. If a location is locked, you can't obviously go there. But when you move to a specific location, it'll give you a whole bunch of actions you can do. You can do these actions in any order, and you complete those actions and give you some resources. Resources will help you play more cards. These different actions will allow you to do different things by playing your own cards, laying your cards out on the bottom side of your board. Here's the trick though, is certain locations you move to on the board allow you to force other players to take cards from their negative deck, and that's going to be played by the person who actually takes that action. So for example, if the Maleficent takes the action, allows her to interact with another player board, she can look at that player's deck of cards, pick out 2 of the cards from the deck, find one of those 2 cards she wants to play, and she can play it on top of that player's deck. Now that player has lost access to half the moves of that location. And the trick is, some of these locations have to be cleared for you to win, or some of these locations have different things that you need to do, so that can hinder the strategy and the ability to win the game. So the game has this interesting way of playing this quick race game where you're working as quick as you can to work through your deck of cards and complete your victory before anybody else can get a whole bunch of negatives on your stack of cards and prevent you from winning the game. And I was not that impressed with this game. I'm not trying to be super negative here, but this is one of those games, as I've already said a few times, that is 100% a race game, which means there was actually a fairly decent amount of luck in this game, especially for some of the villains in this game, because some of the villains requires you to just get one special card in play and manage to move that card to a special location. If that card happens to be really high up in your deck of cards, guess what? You have a pretty good chance of making that happen. If that special card happens to be the last card in your deck, and guess what? You have a very hard time of making that happen. Add in the fact of this game that this is a game that has a lot of take that mechanics, which normally I don't mind take that mechanics, but in various different player accounts, it's going to be really popping up a lot, or it may not pop up at all, depending on if you're playing with a lot of players or if you're playing with the little players. For example, if you happen to be playing a two-player game, it's very easy to see that the other player is going to win the game, and you're going to go for the Hail Mary play. Hopefully you're going to be able to flip a card over, and if it doesn't help you, it doesn't help you, and the other player is going to win the game. So this game is actually not a game that I enjoyed a lot, but I think it's actually a game that could be on a lot of players' tables. This is actually a game that I think actually plays really, really well as a family game, because this is one of those games that's actually not that hard to teach. The hardest thing about the game is just explain all the symbols to all the players. Luckily, every player can get one of their little action boards that explains what all the symbols accomplishes. And the actions that this game has you do are actually very simple, and it's not too complex of a game. You're simply going to move to a location, and it's going to tell you how many actions you can take. And then you're going to have your hand of 4 cards, and you're going to look at your 4 cards and figure out if you can play any of these actions. If you can, you're going to spend the resources it costs, place the card down the bottom of your deck, and it's going to help you work towards doing the grand victory of the game. So the game is actually simple to teach, it's very simple to play, and the really cool thing about the game is there's actually a heck of a lot of replay variety in this game, because just in the base box you have 6 different villains. I think there are already 3 additional expansions, or maybe there's only 2, somebody can quote me or correct me in the comments down below, but that adds at least 6 more villains in the game. So you have a game where every single one of these villains is going to play differently. You have your own special deck of cards, that the cards you're trying to play, and your only special deck of cards that the other players are trying to play against you to prevent you from winning the game. So every single one of these villains is a villain that you're going to have to master and learn how to play, learn their special strategies, how to play the game. Captain Hook wins differently from the Queen of Hearts. The Queen of Hearts just needs to get the croquet game going, while Captain Hook needs to defeat Peter Pan. How you do it is going to be based on your deck of cards and get him into play. But again, how you get to that point is going to play differently from all these villains. So I have to give props to the designers of the game for actually doing a really good job of creating a game that's very easy to teach, very easy to play, but actually has a lot of replay variety in it. Now again, I said this was a game that I wasn't that enamored with, but it's a game I will definitely play. My biggest criticism of the game itself is that it does feel like a lot of multiplayer solitaire, with a little bit of luck thrown in and a little bit of randomness and a little bit of a take that can actually come back and bite you in the end. It doesn't feel like what I would have liked to have gotten in a card game, but it's not so terrible. It's not a game I wouldn't play. It's a game I will play. It's a game I'll play with my family, but it's a game that I definitely think maybe we just missed the mile by that much to become a really great game that I would like to highly recommend. So as you know, I've been playing a lot of RPGs lately, and I've been enjoying it a lot greatly, because the great thing about RPGs is it's extremely easy to play RPGs through video conferencing. Not only that, there are some wonderful tabletop programs that you can get on your computer that allow you to play all these RPGs, and they're actually really fantastic. Now that I'm at the point where I've been using some of these virtual tabletop programs, I am actually going to be using this little TV behind me, and I'm going to be using these virtual tabletops. Once all the social distancing stops, once we get all back to the table, I'm going to actually keep using these virtual tabletops, because they're actually really, really fantastic for keeping track of all the little details that as a DM or as a dungeon master or a game master, quite honestly becomes a pain in the neck to keep track of. I'm actually currently using Fantasy Grounds. I like Fantasy Grounds a lot. Personally, I think Fantasy Grounds is the better virtual tabletop out there, but the competition is Roll20, which is also pretty popular. Roll20 is more of a web-based program, and Fantasy Grounds is more of an actual program that you're going to put on your PC, and it's a little bit more robust, it's a little bit more powerful, and does a lot more of the things that I really like to do. And again, this isn't a review about both those products, just trying to tell you why I like Fantasy Grounds better, because while it does have a steeper learning curve, for me, it allows me to do more of the things I want to do. I think it's really fantastic for the creative DM who wants to create all their content, because it really smoothly allows you to do all those things once you really get into the Unity program and get into the nuts and bolts of it. It's really, really fantastic for using. So I want to talk about RPGs for a minute because I am a huge, huge fan of RPGs. RPGs were a great part of my childhood and my youth going up into my early 20s. I really, really enjoyed playing RPGs a lot. Played a lot of Dungeons & Dragons, a lot of other RPGs. Matter of fact, if you look at my crawl space, I have a lot of classic RPGs. I have GURPS, I have Aftermath, I have 2nd edition D&D, 3rd edition, 3.5 D&D. I have Cinnabar. I have some of the strangest, most off-the-wall RPGs, including some of the White Wolf RPGs, all the ones that I really had a heck of a lot of fun playing. But one of the things that I find really, really missing nowadays from D&D 5e is I'm not the biggest fan of the Forgotten Realms world. Now, I appreciate all the work that went into the Forgotten Realms world because there is a lot of lore there. There's a lot of different story. Heck, the Forgotten Realms has been around for what, at least, see, this is 2020. I think it came out in what, the late 80s? So maybe we're looking at least 30 plus years for the Forgotten Realms. Actually, probably more than that, probably about 85 or something like that. Of course, I can Google it, but nobody wants to watch me type away on a keyboard while you're watching a video because that is boring. But anyways, it's been around for a long time. But one of the things I was always kind of hesitant about the Forgotten Realms is the Forgotten Realms always felt like a very safe RPG world. It always felt like the heroes were very heroic. The villains were more the twist their mustache kind of villains, you know, dastardly, muddy. I would have got away with it if it wasn't for you dastardly kids. But that's how the world always felt. You have these very bad villains like Zam, the Lich. You have the Zentarum, and of course, if none of this makes sense to you, just play along for a minute and just nod your head and act like you know what I'm talking about here. But you have all these villains, but all these villains felt very, no, they didn't feel very dark for me. And I never ever felt like any of the modules, any of the stories, any of the books, it never felt like the bad guys were on the verge of taking over. It always felt like Elminster was going to save the day, Kelvin was going to save the day, somebody was going to save the day, and we wouldn't have to worry about it. There'd be some great warrior who was effectively over leveled versus the bad guys, and darn it, bad guys, maybe next time the world will work out better for you. So my whole point of saying this is saying that one of my most favorite RPG worlds when it came to 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons was the Dark Sun campaign setting. Now, I love Dark Sun because Dark Sun was a world where evil had won. It was a dark world where you could play a heroic hero, but just understand the world was against you. The lords of the towns were against you. The magic was against you. Everything was dark and dark against you. It's also one of the reasons why I also enjoy the Curse of Strahd, because it's one of the same kind of feeling, those kind of worlds. Dark Sun is a world that has a lot of dark topics, and it had a very strong thematic feel to it, and a very strong storyline. Matter of fact, it's so thematic and so strong that I really don't think we would probably ever see it in 5th edition without a couple different changes just to make sure that nobody was offended, because there were some very dark themes in it. Matter of fact, if you never played Dark Sun, the very first adventure that you encounter, and this isn't spoilers because this is 30 plus years ago, but one of the biggest things that was happening is the Dragon Lord in the starting city was trying to sacrifice everybody for the city so he can ascend. And that means there's just killing thousands and thousands of people. So all of our heroes started off as slaves working in the pits, trying to work in the gladiatorial arenas, trying to break themselves free to become the grand heroes and to defeat the bad guys. And the world was very dark. There was a very dark feel to the world because even magic, just using magic, desolated the land. That's why most of the land was struck down to deserts. And matter of fact, water was more precious than gold. So again, I really, really enjoyed 5th edition, or I really enjoyed Dark Sun a lot, and I still enjoy 5th edition, but I don't see Dark Sun coming back. So what's my point of all this? Well, my point of all this is Peterson Games is actually coming out with a couple different 5th edition campaign source book and an actual campaign setting, which I think is going to give me a lot of the really cool feelings I had from classic Dark Sun world. The first thing they have is they are going to have what is called the Dark World. And what the Dark World is, effectively, you are transported as heroes. Again, this isn't spoilers. This is pretty much what's going to happen in the very first couple of pages. But you as heroes are going to be transported to this Dark World where it's a world much like Dark Sun where evil has won. And you're trying to rescue somebody so you can escape from this Dark World and return to your home. And again, I don't want to go further into that, but it is a really cool thing, and it kind of gives me back to that classic feeling of the Dark Sun, where you have a group of heroes, where you have a world that is against you, you have villains that are very much against you, and you have this very strong feeling that you as heroes might lose. Your decisions are going to matter. There are things that you may do where players may die, and this is a really, for me, makes a really cool thematic storytelling rich environment. Again, like I said, when you play Forgotten Realms, it never really feels like the heroes are going to die. The players' characters never really feel like they're going to die. Even the rules kind of for 5th edition D&D make it a little bit harder for player death to happen. So I am really looking forward to the Dark World. Now, the first campaign module for it is coming out very, very soon. Or by the time you watch this video, it might actually be available. And the first campaign is going to take the heroes, I think, up to 5th, maybe 6th level. I have to double check. But each one of the 4 campaign books is going to take the heroes all the way up to level 15. And again, you get to experience this really dark world where the bad guys have won. All the players' decisions are really going to matter. And player mortality is a very strong concept that heroes need to be constantly minding. Now, the other thing that's really cool from Peterson Games, and this should be coming out also very, very soon, is if you play the Planet Apocalypse board game, well, they are bringing out a source book for 5th edition D&D that's going to allow you to play a Planet Apocalypse style game on any D&D world that you ever imagined. Guess what's going to happen to the Forgotten Realms? I know. I'm just really looking forward to it. I really enjoy really good, rich RPG games and storylines and everything like that, where it feels a little less, and I hate to use the term, but it feels a little less bubblegummy, and it actually feels like the heroes have a strong chance that they may not save the day. They may not win out over the bad guys, and I enjoy that in my RPGs and my storytelling. So I'm really looking forward to the Dark World. I'm really looking forward to Planet Apocalypse, because if it does what I think it does, and I've been reading into it and looking into, I think that Planet Apocalypse RPG source book is going to be absolutely fantastic. And it's going to allow players and DMs to create a wonderful, really cool, interesting campaign where all of your decisions are going to matter. Now, talking a little bit more about Peterson Games, and yeah, Peterson Games is a very popular company in my household. If you don't believe me, you can check out my oldest son's YouTube channel where he did an actual video for Hyperspace, which is actually super darn cute. I'll put a little snippet right up here for you guys watching. I'll give it a little smile out of it because I think it's pretty darn hilarious.
Alien spaceship from an unreleased game versus a cat. Who will win? Let's see.
But anyways, it's a very popular company in my household. My household and my friends, we all enjoy all their games. Matter of fact, there isn't a Peterson Games game that I own that anybody in my house doesn't enjoy greatly. But the thing about this is I just want to mention is that Peterson Games has announced that the pledge manager, or for, I should say, the late backing for Dinosaur 1944 is now available. And Dinosaur 1944 looks like a game that I think a lot of players may kick themselves if they don't back this game. The price on it is really great. You have a game that feels a little bit lighter beer and pretzels, which is really, really cool. But it also has a game that's lots of variety and lots of different mechanics, and it has a lot of different play modes. So go ahead and check out the Dinosaur 1944 Kickstarter. I'll put a link for it down below in the show notes down below. But check it out. Again, I think that's a game that a lot of people are really going to be interested in. Over in the world of Kickstarter, there's actually a couple of Kickstarters I'm actually looking forward to and actually look very, very interesting for me right now. So let's go ahead and bring everything over to the computer top. And the first one I'm looking at is the Shivers. Now, the Shivers is a story-based game for 1 to 4 players. And the basic idea of the game is you're going to set up this modular type of building, and the heroes are trying to investigate and are trying to solve a mystery. It's kind of like an advanced version of Clue, and again, I don't want to use that as sound derogatory, but it sounds like it's a very light family style game, kind of like a Clue style game. Now, the game is made for 2 to 5 players, and it's going to play for the younger ages, which is really, really cool for families, especially during what's going on in our world right now. Family gaming is actually a really cool thing. It's something we all are really enjoying doing right now. But the interesting thing about this game is the game has these little building tiles. You're going to flip them up, and the person who's controlling the adventure is going to place these little cards inside behind the little walls back there. And the direction you're going to face that little card is going to decide exactly how the story is going to change every single time you play the game. So you have a little bit of replay variety. So playing the same little story adventure allows you to have variety every single time you play the game. And the cool thing about these little flip up little buildings is you're going to slide them together and they're going to magnetize. So you're going to create kind of like this little diorama where the player is going to move their little hero pawns around these little dioramas, and they're going to investigate, and you can actually open little doors on this to find clues and everything like that. And you're basically trying to solve this mystery. Now, the cool thing that I am liking about this game, besides the fact that it has a really unique idea and it has a lot of replay potential built into the game, one of the worst things I don't like about story games is when you have a story game where you can play it once and you're basically done. There's no reason to go back to it. So I like the fact that there is actually some replay variety in this game because the game's going to change up every single time you play it. But the other thing I'm liking about this game is the price point. You have $65 for a game here that has a lot of replay potential, and I believe you can go all the way up to $95 by getting the deluxe edition, which has some extra different expansions and has some extra episodes, and it's going to add a little bit more variety. Yeah, there's the deluxe edition right there for $95. It adds more rooms, it adds additional creature standees, and adds all these little things in it. So the game has a really good price, and also the game is not being overloaded with plastic miniatures. At this point in my board game collection, as you look behind me, I'm actually enjoying games that just don't want to throw a whole bunch of plastic at you, because I'm always feeling like I got to paint all this plastic before I get it to the table, and it nags at me, and if I don't have my plastic painted, I feel like I'm a horrible human being. So it's actually really cool to have games where I don't need to paint it. I can basically just pull the game out, put it on the table, and start playing with all my friends, or more importantly, play this game with my family. So this game is actually really looking pretty darn interesting. You're basically just going to set up the board every time you play it. You're going to control the adventure for the rest of the heroes, so it feels like this really cool thing where a parent can play this game with their kids. They're going to set up the adventure for their players. They're going to go through and explore this different mansion by moving across these different locations, and you're going to get all these really cool, really interactive stories. Now, like I said, there's a lot of variety in this game. The basic game comes with 8 different adventures, but if you get the expansions, add in a whole bunch of extra adventures. So this looks like this could be a game that has a lot of good potential. Now, it's a first-time creator from this designer, so that's always something I'm always cautious about whenever I look at some of these Kickstarters. But everything in this game looks like it has a very good chance to be a very enjoyable, nice family-style game that's going to play all the way up to 5 players. It seems perfect for families, and especially perfect for my family. Next up, we have Shadow Kingdoms of Valeria. Now, Shadow Kingdoms of Valeria is actually a game in the Valeria universe. Oh my gosh, I almost tongue twisted on that one. And this is going to be a dice allotment, dice placement style game. And this is a game for 1 to 5 players. Again, I am really liking games that go up to the 5 player count. For me, when it comes to my gaming groups, 5 is a magic number for my gaming group, because a lot of times it's 5 of us. There's ever more than 5 of us, yeah, we generally have a tendency to more play RPGs. But 9 times out of 10, when everybody shows up for my house for gaming, it's 5 people. Well, 4 people plus me. So it does limit a lot of the games we can play. We can't get 4-player games on the table. So when I see 5-player games, I'm always very much interested, because I know this is a game I can get to the table, and this is a game I can play. Now, this is a game from Daily Magic Games. Again, it does go up to 5 players, and Daily Magic Games has created a lot of games, and a lot of games in this world. But the basic idea of this game is this is a dice allotment, dice placement game, and you're basically going to move your warlord or your pawn, whatever you want to say. And again, this is a wooden meeple, not a plastic. Again, it's a positive for me, at least the way I'm looking at board games lately. But you can move your pawn to one of these different locations out here on the board, and that's going to give you some actions. And these actions allow you to buy dice, and these dice are going to allow you to build up your armies, and you're going to do things with your armies to score victory points and win the game. Now, the game does look like it offers solo play, which is really awesome, especially in our day and age where we want to have just some games to play when we can't invite our friends over. But this game also looks like it has a good amount of play to it, a good amount of strategy, and a lot of variety. And you're basically going to level up your hero through your warlord and through your basic army. I guess I'm using the wrong terms because I just basically read their basic, very, very basic. There's not even a lot of art in it, but their downloadable rulebook, which basically has a lot of plain text with some images in it. So I'm sure some things may change, but there are some really cool things that look good about this game. It looks like it has a good strategy to it, a lot of good variety, and it looks like a dice placement game that I can actually enjoy. If you ever watched my channel before, you ever watched my luck, you know I don't have the greatest luck with dice games. So I always enjoy seeing games that have dice, but dice manipulation, so I can kind of counteract my horrible luck with dice. So this is another game that actually has my interest. And again, this is a game that actually looks like it has a pretty darn good price to it. $55 to get into this game. And matter of fact, if you back the game through a Kickstarter, they actually offer you some extra modules that are only going to be available through the Kickstarter or through their retail store only. And I don't think these modules are going to make it into the retail version of the game. So for less than $60, you get a game with lots of dice, some good pedigree with a company that's made a lot of games before that actually has some really good, enjoyable replay variety and some very positive feedback on them. So this is another one that looks like you really can't go wrong on it. It looks like there's some extra add-ons in there that makes it definitely worthwhile backing this one in the Kickstarter. Let's go ahead and close this video out with the poll. And of course, like I said earlier, there's no poll in this video because, well, I'm going to have to explain it right now. Last month when I did the poll, we did a poll between A Touch of Evil and we did a poll between Dawn of the Zeds. Unfortunately, each one of those games got 2 votes apiece. So I hope that's not an indication of not a lot of interest in those games. So what I'm basically going to do is I'm just going to shoot my next 2 videos, going to be those 2 games. I haven't decided which game I'm going to shoot first, but most likely it's going to be A Touch of Evil because I've been playing that and I have a game of it set up and I'm in the middle of it right now. So it's going to be the game that's more fresh in my memory so I can have a better teach of it and a better review of that game. But of course, leave comments down below if you want to try to sway me. This is your last chance because I'm going to start recording here in just a couple days. So that's going to bring the end of this monthly video to a close. If you have any comments or questions, make sure you leave them down in the YouTube comments down below. I'll be sure to get to them as quickly as I can. You can also feel free to email me off the shelf board game reviews. That's otsbgr@gmail.com. Be sure to answer email as quickly as I can. If you enjoyed this video, series, click that like button. Click that like button. I think that should be over here. And as always, thanks for watching.